First of all, I hope everyone is doing well. I'd like to offer you my greetings. And today I'd like to take this opportunity to wish all of you Tashi Delek for the new year of the Iron Ox. I hope that in this new year you will all be well, that we accomplish all you wish, be happy and be healthy and live long. For the next 4 weeks, starting from today, I will speak about 2 autobiographical praises by Mikyo Dorje, the good deeds and praises entitled He Searched Thoroughly. Normally we have a gunshe, but now we're having it in the spring season, so we're calling it the Spring Teachings. And so I think maybe it would be good if we just leave the name as the Spring Teachings. The reason this is that everyone is all rushing to have gunshes or winter teachings, but there's no one who has any spring teachings or summer teachings. So I think maybe in the future we should change it and call it the spring teachings, not the winter teachings. But we haven't decided for sure. Now, my principal motivation or reason for choosing these texts as the Dharma to teach is that among all the incarnations of the Yawan Karmapa, the one whom people who study the great philosophical texts often feel the most affinity for is the 8th Karmapa, Mikyo Dorje. And the reason for this is not just that he wrote commentaries on the Middle Way, Prajnaparamita, Vinaya, and Abhidharma. It is also because he used the power of his own diligence at learning and the power of his intelligence to write many complete and unerring explanations of the intent of the sutras and tantras, the assertions of the great texts, the view meditation of the conduct of Kagyu masters of the past, and so forth. So I think that it is his kindness that it's not only the Karma Kamsan, but also all of the Dakpo Kagyu can go along together with the other Tibetan schools holding their heads high. And so I think he's the mostly because of his kindness. Now, someone like me, I'm not really a scholar who has specialized in the study of history and biography, and I don't have a wide perspective. But over many years, I have read Mikyo Dorje's writings in a scattershot sort of way, and gained a bit of experience and knowledge from that. In addition to that, I may not have been able to develop really, true, pure faith and devotion as one should according to the Dharma. But if we speak about it in a worldly way, I do have a bit of faith and attachment of thinking that he is someone who did something for us, who did kindness for us. Perhaps I have a bit of a partiality for him. Also, if we think that we should uphold, preserve, and spread well these teachings of the practice lineage, we need to know what are the origins of the practice lineage. How did the forefathers initially establish the teachings? How did the later masters uphold them? And in the end, how much hardship and effort did they go through to spread them, and so forth? We need to research and study how much work they did for this. And the more we study this, the more we can understand what the majesty and essence and value of this lineage are. So I don't think of my teachings of these biographies this year as merely teaching like the topic of a history class. I don't think of it that way. I'd ask you also to please not consider it like that either. But I'm not saying that studying history is bad. The reason I'm saying this is that it's because we're Dharma practitioners. And if you're someone who practices the Dharma, no matter what study you do, we shouldn't be merely focused externally on learning a particular thing. We need to at least take some interest in turning our attention inward and seeing what we can do to have an effect on our own mind. And so this is, I thought I had to explain this here at this point. In particular, the real instructions of the great master of the past is not what they wrote on paper that's included in some text. Instead, it is how, throughout their entire lives, how they thought, how they performed their deeds and activity, and so forth. The actual way that they lived their life is the actual instruction that they give. And also, what also determines whether a guru is an authentic guru or not is how the Lama acted and how they thought in their lifetimes. How is it they did what they did? Did it all accord with the Dharma or not? And that is what we need to look at to see whether a guru is authentic or not. In particular, these two autobiographies of Lord Mikya Dorje do not take it as a given that he was the Karmapa or an emanation of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva or someone who possessed the wisdom, love, and power of the previous Karmapas. When you read these Bodhisattvas, it sounds like he's an ordinary person. As an ordinary monk, how he worked hard to make his life be in harmony with the Dharma. And teaches the reasons and the situations, like gives direct instructions from his own experience during his lifetime. So therefore, these are actually profound instructions on the real practice. And so when I'm saying these instructions, when you should think about, as you listen to the Dharma, please think about what sort of a motivation and comportment you should have and listen well. So now, and before I start to actually speak about Mikya Dorje's life story, I thought it would be helpful to say a bit about how the name Karmapa arose. And what are the reasons and purposes for calling the Karmapa the bearer of the black crown and other such historical background? And so I'll give you, from now on, I should give you some historical background. So when we think about how the name Karmapa was given to the incarnations of the Karmapa, and who the first Karmapa was, there are several different explanations of this in Tibetan histories. To give one example, the great Sakya scholar Mangtuludubdyasa wrote in his Dates of the Great Masters, in which he says, Dusam Khyentse is explained to be an emanation of the sixth Buddha of this fortunate eon, the Buddha Simha. But Karmapakshi is said to be an emanation of Sarha, not the reincarnation of Dusam Khyentse. So I think that the first holder of the black crown should be identified as Karmapakshi. However, it is clear that the name Karmapa was given to Dusum Khenpa for found in Kamponenan Minme, Karmaplateng in between, and Surpa Monastery in Tu. Therefore, there's a reason for using the name Karmapa for Dusum Khenpa. So this is what he said. And so there's a real gist of what he is saying here. Is that there is no explanation of Karmapakshi being the reincarnation of Dusum Khenpa. So therefore, the first Karmapa must be Karmapakshi. Also, Dusum Khenpa founded the monasteries in Tu in Upper Tibet, Mei and Lower Tibet, in between these two, in particular the Karmaplateng monastery. And so for that reason, he could be called by the name Karmapa. So one could say that the Dusum Khenpa was the first Karmapa, but he was not the actual first Karmapa. The actual first Karmapa should be considered Karmapakshi. So this is what he says. And so as he said this, a lot of other authors didn't do any particular research into that and just followed his opinion. In particular, many Gelugpa scholars have opinions that accord with this. To give one example of that, Tuken Lodzen Chuginima, in his Crystal Mirror of the Philosophical Schools, wrote, "Some say that Pomdrapa's student Karmapakshi is a reincarnation of Dusum Khenpa, but he's also known as an emanation of Saraha, and there's no historical source for him being a rebirth of Dusum Khenpa." And so when the masters of the Gelugpas and the Sakya, these great scholars of these schools, and the feeling that I got looking at that is reminded me of a quote from the fifth Dalai Lama. So it just brought it right back for me. Now what he says is, when they get in the middle of the fight between the tigers and lions of the Sakya and Gelug scholars, the fox-like Kaji meditators should be careful. And so that just immediately came right to me. You've got the Sakya and the Gelug scholars are like tigers and lions who are fighting, and the Kaiju meditators who don't know anything are like foxes, shouldn't get in between. So it's like that's the feeling I had for it. But I got a bit of confidence, and I think you have to look at it. So I have to give a bit of explanation of this. So in general, So at that time, it was unlike how it was for later Karmapas. There was no tradition of recognizing Karmapakshi as an emanation or reincarnation of Dusum Khenpa and having a formal ritual to install him on the throne. But in actuality, Karmapakshi himself said clearly that he was an emanation or incarnation of Dusum Khenpa. In his autobiography entitled "The Subject of Realizing the Three Times to be Timeless and One, or Perfecting Great Strength," he wrote that in Lord Dusum Khenpa's life story, in a future time, he would appear in the 7 places of a city in Hlota. Also, when he saw the Dichu, he is reported to have said, "There will be someone who fulfills my intentions." And he said, "The patron Gompa will not enter the true path for 2 or 3 births." And so for these reasons, in order to fill these 3 intentions of Dusum Khenpa, though I am now known by the name Karmapa, I have taken birth with mindfulness and awareness in the clan of the emperors of Drilung, a land rich with true Dharma. So what he's saying here is that Dusum Khenpa had left a testament saying, in the future, is saying this will happen. And these predictions. And so in accordance with these prophecies, he took birth. So he had reasons. He explained the reasons for taking birth. And in the very same biography, the beings of the past, known as Dusum Khenpa, and the present stillness of Dharmakaya Ranjan Dorje are different in words and different times, but in actuality, they're the same in essence. And so here, it's Ranjan Pakshi, Dusum Khenpa. So Dusum Khenpa and Ranjan Dorje are the same. all of a sudden we're getting the languages of the gods and languages of not just the languages of all the humans. So, in any case, Karmapakshi said that in accordance with the testaments of Dusum Khenpa, he took rebirth, and this is very clear. And likewise, he also said after that he and that the previous Dusum Khenpa and the present Ranjadorji, which is another name for Karmapakshi, their names are a little bit different, and they're different times, but in actuality, they're one in essence. And so this is what he said. Also, Dusum Khenpa's student Pomdrapa and the master of Karmapakshi, there's a biography of Pomdrapa by Karmapakshi, within which Karmapakshi records Pomdrapa saying, "Last night Dusum Khenpa and the Kajus were all visible above you. You must have the karmic fortune. And today I have a vision of Dusum Khenpa filling all space. You are the fortunate one, so do not go anywhere. Stay here and practice this dharma of mine." And so what this is saying, Karmapakshi's guru was Pomdrapa, and when Pomdrapa met Pomdrapa had many pure visions of Dusum Khenpa. So he said, "You must be a particular student with a great karma. You're a great being." And so this is what Pomdrapa said. Likewise, Karmapakshi restored all three of Dusum Khenpa's monasteries and spread the teachings there. And so because of this, it was no different than if Lord Dusum Khenpa himself had gone there. And so thus later followers accepted as well known and undisputed that he was the Nirmanakaya, or emanation, or reincarnation of Dusum Khenpa. And so for this reason, even though at time there was no custom of recognizing tulkus or throning tulkus as we have now, they hadn't developed, but that does not mean that he is not the reincarnation or emanation of Dusum Khenpa. For example, when we read the Jataka tales or stories of the Bodhisattvas, there's no particular identifying a story of anyone identifying the Bodhisattva, saying this is the Bodhisattva, or enthroning the Bodhisattva, but that doesn't mean that they were not incarnations. So generally, the Karmapa is well known to be praised with, and this is said quite often by this, but what is understood about it is that he is the same mind stream of the sixth Buddha, the fortunate eon. And where this primarily comes from is a prophecy that Lama Zhang revealed at Utah. And this says he is the sixth Buddha, the fortunate eon. And because it says that, and Lama Shang also himself respected Dusum Khenpa, saying he is the incarnation of the sixth Buddha. So in brief, when we look at the histories and life stories, there was no widespread custom of calling Dusum Khenpa the Karmapa. In the Feast for the Learned and other texts, it is recorded in these texts that are researched and authoritative. It is recorded that when he went forth as a monk, he had pure vision of Dakinis appointing him as the embodiment of the activity of the Buddhas and calling him the Karmapa. When we examine these accounts of pure visions, it seems that there to have been a secret name that was not commonly known. For that reason, Karmapakshin was well known to call himself Karmapa. It seems so. When we examine these accounts, it seems that there was to have been a secret name that was not commonly used. It's really only during the lifetime of Karmapakshi that he became well known by the name Karmapa. And likewise, Karmapakshi himself was known by the popular lineage by the name Karmapakshi. But there are also other instances where the rebirth commonly being known by their predecessor's secret name. For example, Karmapakshi's secret name of Rangchen Dorje became the commonly known name of the third Karmapa, Rangchen Dorje. Rangchen Dorje's secret name, Rolpe Dorje, became the commonly used name of the fourth Karmapa. And there are several other instances of this as well. And so for these reasons, sometimes when we read Karmapakshi and Dorje's works, we often confuse them and they're mistaken for each other's. And the reason for that is both to say that they both would write texts under the name Rangchen Dorje, so they're sometimes mixed up. However, there's another way of explaining this. In Karma Chakma's guidebook to the Kaju monasteries, it says in this that Karmapakshi was called Karmapa because he stayed at Karma monastery. So there's this one way of explaining it. But when you think about it, if it was said because we were talking about the greatness of Karma monastery, or as we've talked about in terms of being the founder, then it really should be used for the first Karmapa, Dusum Khyentse. You'd think that this would be a name that should be given to the founder, Dusum Khyentse, but it was given to Karmapakshi. So maybe it was because Karmapakshi spent a long time at Karma monastery, or maybe there was another reason. And this is something that should be examined. However, but in the Kamsang histories, I've never seen, in these histories of the Karma Kamsan, I've never seen such an explanation. It is in Karma Chakma's guidebook to Kaju monasteries. Likewise, Mangta Ludur Jasa said the Karmapakshi founded the Karma Hlateng, and for that reason was called could have been called Karmapa, but that doesn't work out in terms of the time, because the Karma Hlateng mountain retreat was founded by Rangchen Dorje, and this is clearly written in Rangchen Dorje's autobiography as well as in other reliable sources. And they all say the same thing. And so there's no dispute about that. So in sum, the main point is that the first one to be commonly known as the Karmapa was Karmapakshi. If we count from the first bearer of the black crown, that would be Dusum Khyentse. And the first one to have been recognized as a tulku was Rangchen Dorje. He was the first recognized as a tulku. So that is how it is. And for these reasons, Dusum Khyentse said that in Surbi here there will be 3 bearers of the black crown. So this is a prophecy that he made. And the point of this, I think, is as what I just mentioned. The reasons that I just mentioned, or the points that I mentioned, because of that, he said that, I believe. Likewise, Lord Mikya Dorje wrote an explanation of the Yoga Tantra, in which he wrote, "These days in the Dapo Kaju, Bhutan and Rangchen Dorje are the undisputed eyes of Dharma of both Sutra and Tantra. Of these 2, the latter, known as the omniscient Rangchen Rinpa, was the second to bear the name Karmapa and the third bearer of the black crown." So in the Dapo Kaju, there are 2 great scholars of Sutra and Tantra, One was the omniscient Bhutan, and one was Rangjung Dorje. And Rangjung Dorje was the second one to be known by the name Karmapa, and the third bearer of the black crown. So I think this is a quote that is very precise about the history. As I said before, he was the first one who was well known by the name Karmapa was Karmapakshi, as I said before. And the second was Rangjung Dorje. In terms of the bearers of the black crown, Rangjung Dorje was the third, Karmapakshi was the second, and Dusum Khyentse was the first. And so this is really talking very precisely about the history. And so I've been saying the bearer of the black crown, the bearer of the black crown several times. And what this is saying is that really what is particular about the incarnations of the Karmapa is wearing the black crown on their heads. And so this is particular. And for that reason, the Karmapa himself would be called the Blackout Lama. And that's where this tradition came from. And so the Karma himself would wear the crown on his head. He'd encourage people to recite the Mani Mantra. And while wearing it, he'd distribute the black pills to the 7 birds. And he would also give other students crowns that the same shape as his own crown, but they were white, yellow, red, or green in color. And so because of these deeds, and because of they would continue their activity, or we could say their cultural activities would really flourish. So if we want to speak about the black crown, when people who have faith in the Karmapa from a Dharma's perspective, or attachment to him from a worldly perspective, what they think is that even if they do not really know about the symbolism or history of the black crown, will say it is liberation on seeing, or it is sacred. And some people will think that the Karmapa's black crown has no symbolic Dharma meaning. Instead, it was a crown given to him by the Mongol or Chinese emperors. It indicated like a crown of activity, or it was like the Queen of England's crown, a crown that represented his authority and power. And so there are many who think this as well. Still others say that the Karmapa uses the black hat ceremony as a means to get offerings. So for that reason, the crown itself becomes a tool to accumulate wealth. So there are people who explain that as well. And some people say that the black crown is a hat that doesn't accord with the Vinaya rules. It is a black hat of the Mara Dharmas, so you shouldn't wear it at all. So there are people who say many different things. Well, the reason why there's so many different things is, from one perspective, it is because the Karmapa's black crown became too well known, so it became something that everyone spoke about. And so they can show that, or from another perspective, it's because they don't know the symbolism in history, the actual system in history. And they have many ideas and projections or ideas of their own. They make things up, and so that's why these opinions occur. So when did the black crown or black hat first appear? It was probably first worn at the time of the Dusum Khyentse. Here, Tukha Lobsang Chiginima writes in his Crystal Mirror of the Philosophical Schools, "It is said that Dusum Khyentse wore a black crown, so he became known as the bearer of the black crown. However, the Mongol king gave Karmapakshi a black crown of activity, and it was definitely from that point on that the incarnations were known as the bearers of the black crown. These days, the ranks of Chinese ministers are distinguished by the ornaments on their hats. This is a new tradition of the Qing emperors. during the Mongol and Han dynasties, they were distinguished by the shapes of their hats. The imperial preceptors were given black crowns with gold blazons, and it seems that for this reason Emperor Yunglo gave Jamjen Chuje and others such crowns. Therefore, I expect that to say that the black crown of the Karmapas was made from the hair of a trillion Dakinis and offered him, and to proclaim his greatness widely, is solely a made-up tale. He doesn't give any particular reasons for saying this, but he criticizes, saying that the Karmapakshi was only from the time of Karmapakshi. It was not any dharma practice. It was actually a symbol of work, as a sign kind of activity or of work or of rank. If you put emphasis, whether or not there was a tradition in the black crown at the time of Dusum Khenpa, the only way to determine this is to research the reliable old stories of the old masters. We don't have any other method. So within the collected works of Dusum Khenpa, there is a text I've read. It's a short text called the 3 Cycles on Mixing. And so what this text is a disciple of Dusum Khenpa took notes on what Dusum Khenpa himself said. And what that says is, think that above your crown there is a white swirling moon disk. On top of that, visualize there sits your root guru, inseparable from Dusum Khenpa, with white hair and a black crown, as light and the nature of light. And so that is what is said there. And so for that reason, what this shows us is that from that time on, the students of Dusum Khenpa when they're visualizing Dusum Khenpa and doing practicing Guru Yoga and so forth, they would visualize him with wearing a black crown. So it shows that there was that tradition of visualizing him in that way from that time. Likewise, in Karmapakshi's autobiography, the subject of realizing the 3 times to be timeless and 1, or perfecting great strength, what it says there is, because Lord Dusum Khenpa was blessed as a self-arisen wisdom of an emanation of Indu Bodhi, in all his disciples' perception, he appeared as inconceivable emanations and displays, like a reflection in a mirror. Because he was the same in essence as Saraha, as a symbol of the unchanging Varna nature, he wore a crown of black silk with a gold blaze, such as had never appeared anywhere before on earth, representing the unrisen Buddha through core-emergent wisdom through the various symbols. And so it's basically saying that the crown of black silk or black fabric with a gold blaze that had never been before known in Tibet. And so it says that he wore such a crown. Likewise, Lord Miki Dorje wrote a history of the black crown, in which it says that he gives a quotation from an old biography of Dusum Khenpa, where it says, he wore on his head a black silk crown with designs of mounds of round flowers. And so that he said this is in an old biography. Likewise, many other histories, such as the Feast for the Learned, and these reliable histories, say that when Dusum Khenpa went forth as a monk, he had a pure vision of many thousands of Dakinis tying a black crown to his head, and saying that he was the embodiment of the activity of the Buddhas and giving him the name Karmapa. And so he had this pure vision, and because he saw that later, he took the crown that he saw in his vision as an example and either made or had made a black crown. For not only that, the crown that Dusum Khenpa wore was later kept among the treasures of Tsurpu Monastery. So how do we know that it was kept in the treasury? Mikami Dorje's lama. Mikami Dorje had 4 different lamas, and among them, the one who taught him the great philosophical texts was Karma Trinepa. And Karma Trine wrote the questions in response, was the summary of liberation. And what it says there is, some assert that the crown is the empowerment crown of Saraha, and due to that, it is also said to be the hair of 1,000 Dakinis. This is a story of an emanation. It is unconceivable to ordinary individuals. It is said to be in the black treasury of Surpu, but in the present day we have not seen it. So he said that. So he's saying that there was this crown of Dusum Khenpa that was made from the hair of a trillion Dakinis, and it is in the treasury of Surpu, but I haven't seen it. He said. And this is what he's saying there. Likewise, when the 15th Karmapa, Kachap Dorje, enthroned the second Jamgon controller, Khyentse Weser, at Surpu, he had the black crown of Dusum Khenpa placed just for a moment on the head of Control. And so as we can see that the crown of Dusum Khenpa, even in later times, was one of the great sacred treasures of Surpu Monastery. So, to surprise us, from these, we can infer from these above histories that the black crown worn by the Karmapa dates to the time of the Karmapa Dusum Khenpa, and it was not first offered to him by any patron or king or great person or lama. Instead, it is clear that it is made by Dusum Khenpa himself or made by others at his direction. And so this is very clear. However, one thing that we need to know here is that we always say that we talk of the Karmapa as the bearer of the black crown. We call the crown black. But we're saying this for convenience. It's easier to say, but in actuality, the color of the crown is a deep dark blue or bluish black. It is not completely black. And so the reason why the crown is made like this is primarily connected to the practice of Tantra. In the Turiya Tantra, there are empowerments. Like in the Kriya Tantra, there are the water and crown empowerments. And of them, the hat can be considered a crown for the crown empowerment. So also the crowns can have different colors and shapes in terms of the 5 Buddha families. So here, the Karmapa's crown is to symbolize the family of Akshobhya Vajra. It has a Vajra on its blaze, and the dark blue color symbolizes that it is unmoving or unshapable from the Dharma nature. It's just like people use space as a symbol for being unchanging. And so taking the color of space as an example, and as given the color of being dark blue. And so for that reason, when we're practicing the Sakta secret mantra, there are extraordinary methods for reversing fixation in ordinary appearance through symbols, meaning, and signs, or through the symbolized and the symbolized. And so the crown was made in accordance with that. And also there are other explanations of the crown in that way. Now, of these many different explanations of the black crown, one that is still excellent that we can read, and the earliest, is by the 3rd Karmapa, Rangjung Dorje. So I think that is the earliest. And this explanation of the black crown, if I just read this, I thought, what it says here is, Namo Guru, I prostrate to the Lord Gurus. Dakinis, grant your blessings. I shall explain in particular the qualities of this black crown with Garuda wings and gold blaze. The base being slightly dark is a symbol of the unchanging Dharmakaya. The sides being square is a symbol of the four immeasurables. Having two Garuda wings is a sign of the inseparability of means and prajna. Having 3 points is a symbol of the 3 kayas being complete in him. Having 4 colors is a symbol of accomplishing the 4 activities. Being adorned with 5 silks is a symbol of the 5 families dwelling above the head. Having the parasol, sun, and moon is a sign that the Guru is a wish-fulfilling jewel, and always accompanies him, never apart. Having a blaze on the forehead is a symbol of the one Dharma, of knowing the one Dharma that liberates all, and understanding everything known to be one. This crown that has these symbols is the empowerment crown of the great Brahman. It was bestowed by the Dakinis. It is the crown of Disamkyempa. May those with faith and devotion for this crown meet the glorious Disamkyempa. So this is the third Karmapa Rangchen Dorje's description of the black crown. And so for this reason, and so this is explaining the black crown as being connected to the extraordinary tantric methods of reversing fixation through symbolic methods. So I think now we probably need to take the break, right? Yes, we'll take the break. And so we will have a half-hour break. And then I will continue with the teaching. Thank you.